Hello, welcome to another episode of Results Selling Framework Podcast. I am Keith Marchiano, Senior Executive Coach here at Pax8 Academy. Today we're going to discuss IT service providers selling cybersecurity. If a client or a prospect has a cyber incident, their need and their attention span will be high. They're going to be looking to solve an instant problem. So what do you do if they've never had a cyber incident that's impacted their company yet? The best salespeople create interest and curiosity. With AI being the hot buzzword, the problem is MSPs will focus on AI and the solution while our buyer will have no idea how to use it or what it's about. So today we're going to discuss on how to do this, how to have good conversations, how to ask questions, and how to uncover the need when having conversations with business executives. All right. I would like to welcome back to the show James LaVine, recovering MSP business owner, and his real title today is Academy Senior Sales Specialist. James, welcome back.
Thanks, Keith. Great to be back as always. Love it.
Excellent. Yeah, we're gonna have some fun with this topic. Security being the hotbed and all, AI being the new, hot buzzword on the town, and then obviously you and I really kind of talking around result selling framework and how that can kind of solve the the commoditization trap that people fall into.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on this. It's interesting. And Keith, I actually speak quite a bit for different Pax8 events on this very topic. And you also, the audience may not know this, but at Academy, Pax8 Academy, we just got done developing a brand new cybersecurity coaching program. And part of that program is, even though internally you're building out your own cybersecurity posture and building up your own awareness, and you're learning how to actually utilize the tools and move your way into we like to say using CIS controls framework to get to that IG3 level, implementation group 3 level, the highest possible level. And that's drinking your own champagne, right? Where you are literally living that security lifestyle. But another element of that is, how do you go and have these conversations with your prospects or with your clients about managing the risk or mitigating the risk, or just building the security posture that they need based upon their compliance or the data that they need to protect. And so I think hopefully today we can talk about some of that.
Awesome. Yeah, it'll be exciting. So it's been a while since you've been on, so why don't you give everybody, just quick 1 minute background around who you are, and don't forget to include that one fun fact about yourself.
Oh, fun fact. Keith Marchiano. I can't believe you're going to make me do that.
Got to do it.
So I am a serial entrepreneur, and I have actually owned 8 businesses over 40 years. But my last 2 businesses, my primary was my MSP I had for 25 years, and I exited about 3.5 years ago. And in parallel, I had a marketing company in conjunction with that. And so I ran those both at the same time. And I had that company for 12 years. And when I exited, I kind of started fresh. I got recruited to become a coach and to give back to the community. And during that time, I thought I knew everything. Of course, I didn't. And now being surrounded by amazing people at Academy, I learned how to coach well, how to share knowledge, but moreover, how to really help the MSPs out there have conversations, relate to people. How do you actually help your clients or your prospects get what they're desiring, creating the real value for them, and not just thinking about how you're going to just sell something. No longer products. It's about actually creating value and service. So. Oh, and
Love
my fun fact.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. I don't know if it's well, to me, it's fun. A lot of people don't realize I was actually in the Army for 10 years. I started off as military intelligence, Russian and
Thank you
Spanish
for
were
your
my 2
service.
languages. And then I went special operations the second half of my career. And I spent many, many years outside of the country, disconnected from the internet and from movies and culture. And literally, when I came back to the United States, I had to relearn a couple of years worth of baseball scores and footballs and movies, because I had no idea what the popular songs were. I was literally out of country that long. So that's
Wow.
always a fun little nugget to tell people.
That's a cool one. And thanks again for your service. Appreciate you, James.
Always a pleasure, brother.
So I usually ask people, what do you like about sales? But, I know you're also, like you said, that serial entrepreneurist. So, throw them both. What do you like about sales? What do you like about running a business?
I would say, well, to me, they're synonymous. The selling is really just the being able to reach out and create real value and solve real problems for people. And I have that kind of servant's heart where no matter what business I had, there was a genuine need, a genuine problem, and I found a solution for it. And even on the MSP space, the right set of services and making it wholly complete, but also offering other things that that particular prospect or client may not have ever considered. Could have been web services and voice over IP services and different things in the day, which are now more commonplace. But there was always this, how do I do a complete business in the box for you kind of setup? And that's how I really approached my business. And so to me, selling is synonymous with that. You have the need. Can I help you get out of your own way to understand how this is the perfect fit for you? And then I have my proof points of, how we do it, why we do it, and why it's best for you. And once that value exchange is in place, it's only smart for them to actually exchange their money for our services, and that value exchange is created. So pretty simple.
Yeah. Love that. I love the sales mindset that you have there. I'm not selling, I'm solving problems, right? That's awesome. Great nugget of wisdom there. Especially for the IT owners out there that are kind of like, hey, sales isn't my gig, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you said that. It's when I talk to MSP owners out there, a lot of, especially they're very technically minded and they struggle thinking, oh, I got to learn how to do sales and they open up all these books and they try to drive themselves directly to this sales process. And they miss the big point, which is you're literally solving someone's problem, something that could be a huge detractor or it could be the end of their business. And you literally are their potential hero. You're setting them up. You're going right in and solving something that they could never imagine because you are the technical expert. You bring knowledge and wisdom that they could only imagine. And when you have that mindset of, I'm truly going to serve you, I'm going to help you, then the money and the value just follows. It's actually, I found selling quite easy.
Love it. Awesome. Great intro. So let's dive in here a little bit. AI, I kind of said it at the top. It's the big buzzword that's out there, right? So how should MSPs prepare their prospects and clients for AI integration?
Yeah.
Where do they start?
I love this. I'm glad you're bringing this up, Keith. It's apropos where we're at in 2025. And we had the first iteration, right? The whole GPTs and all the different LMMs that are out there, right? And now we're finally at this point where people are, how do I bring this into my business? How do I optimize? And people are starting to bring in what we call shadow AI. And employees at your clients or prospects, they're literally downloading, buying services without your knowledge, and they're actually creating holes in the network. And they're creating holes in data, or allowing their data to be accessible in multiple avenues. And so as an MSP, especially if you're looking at the security space and really shoring up the defenses, we have this thing called AI readiness. Like before you allow anybody in your company to start downloading and integrating and using these tools, you need to have a few things in place. And this is where an MSP can step in as the technical expert and the true advisor and say, look, you are leaving yourself very vulnerable. You're at risk. All your data is available. Your financials could be out there. There's a lot of things that can happen. You can lose trust, reputation factors. There's so many new variables now that AI is introducing that we didn't really have before. And now as an MSP, we need to step in and do the right kind of assessments and really prepare them for an AI readiness kind of stance before they do the AI piece of it.
So you're saying from, the security framework needs to be in place to be able to, one, use it themselves, but then two, work with clients. And I'm assuming the same thing, that the security readiness of the clients need to be in place to protect them from fraud and such that may be going on out there from a security piece.
That's exactly
Dive into
it.
that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's interesting is just because people are integrating AI doesn't mean that the threat has gone away. In fact, if anything, it's gotten worse because now you have a non-human threat actor who can use basically whether it's a human or artificial intelligence itself trying to attack you, because we don't really understand the intent. AI itself can start grabbing data, doesn't understand what is an attack, what's not an attack, or should this be secure, not be secure. And if we don't actually have the security controls in place for data governance, right? Inputting data, outputting data, the storage of data, the security permissions of data, just some really basic controls like that. Or who has access to these tools? Are we even going to allow an AI agent access these tools, or is it going to go through a third party? How do we filter that? All these little basic essentials would allow this data to be out in the wild or uncontrollable. And that we know that is the worst case scenario. Before, at least we had some semblances of control, but now introducing AI, it's scanning and gathering even more data at lightning speed. And a lot of our newer tools that are out there are really struggling to know, well, wait a minute, is this AI doing this? Is this a human doing this? How do I stop this? Is this a new variant? Or this seems to be a recognized way of manipulating data, let's let it pass through. But technically, it could have been a polymorphed virus that looked like it was a nice, clean activity in your network, but actually was actually gathering data and extracting and sending it somewhere. So there's all these new variables that without proper security in place, and we say that GRC, right? Everybody here on this call should know this: governance, risk, compliance. Like, how do we make sure that all these main elements are really dialed in before we introduce AI, which is going to just open up every possible hole, overturn every rock of our data, even the oldest stuff that we thought we hadn't seen in 10, 15 years, that can come back to the surface. And we've got to make sure these measures and controls are in place. Just like, well, I'll just leave it at that. I think that is really the sweet spot of being AI ready, is tightening down the security. So when you're out talking to your prospects and your clients about this, it's like you have that basic conversation. Hey, I know you're thinking about AI and it's all the buzzword, but did you know that by allowing this on your network, and we haven't actually put in the right kind of controls in place, or even the policies and the right kind of governance, we're really opening this up to the equivalent of just taking all your personal files and leaving them on the street and letting anybody just walk by and grab something. Is that really what we want to do? Or should we kind of lock it away in a file cabinet somewhere, or at least have those conversations, right? And again, creating that value for your client or your prospect to make sure it's the right setup for them and they're not leaving themselves open for massive amounts of risk.
I love this conversation. I had Matt Lee on this podcast back in October, and we talked around, he talked about the importance of having a cybersecurity framework, picking one, sticking with it, becoming experts at it. I mean, with AI, the exposure is even greater. I mean, I've seen it and read this, where people can penetrate into the network and now they have control over your listening devices, right? You and I were talking into microphones. You have webcams that have recording devices. They're recording people's voices and then turning that using AI against them into a cyber incident. Stuff like that. What else is going on? Like, that's a crazy thing. Like, if I'm a MSP, obviously then the risk comes on us to help prevent that. But what are some of the things that you're seeing out there and with this cyber liability and with AI uses to the bad guys can use, if you will?
Yeah, you already touched on one of the big ones. So whether it's a human threat actor or somebody using an AI tool, everybody knows that the human being in someone's organization is the weak spot. And we, by our very nature, especially an employee at a prospect or a client, they want to do their job. They want to do it quickly. They want to be efficient. And so now with AI being introduced, like you said, it could be a voice deepfake. It could be video. They can grab screenshots. They can grab invoices. They can grab proposals. They can grab anything they want and make it look real and redirect money, redirect funds from that aspect. They can go after your clients and try and take your data. Or somebody could actually hire an AI threat actor to try and crush your business so their client can be elevated up. So there's different ways that this all can play out. And it really comes down to, again, creating those controls and plug in all the holes that you have in your network, and in any way somebody get the data, but really policies. And my big thing is educate. You've got to train the people. An MSP, their number one thing that they can do for anybody is to teach and educate people of what is going on and allay the fears, teach their teams how to really handle this data. Right, we can do a lot on the back end for the MSPs. We do this all the time with all our different backup programs and MDRs, and of course, as an MSP, we always assume breach. Right, we don't. The old days of, hey, we just want to detect it are long gone. AI can blow right past detection level. You have to assume that somebody's already been inside your network and they're bouncing around and they're getting ready to launch a payload. So when you do that assume breach model, now you're thinking, okay, how fast can I do recoveries? How can I minimize the blast radius? All the different things you can do, even with AI. But that's all part of the AI readiness, setting it up ahead of time, and then having these conversations through education and making sure that the employees really don't participate, or at least they know of the potential risk, and to be a little extra vigilant, more than they've ever been before. And again, we're fighting human complacency, unfortunately, and it's people just kind of getting these routines and, oh, hey, Keith just sent me this invoice and it looks valid. Oh yeah, I guess I'll just pay it. Boom, money gone. Or CEO of a company, we've heard those stories over and over and over about money being redirected. And once it hits the threat actor's accounts, it's dispersed into 1,000 sub accounts and never to be recovered. Right. And then you got a whole new cyber insurance issue you got to deal with. So these are so many factors and there's tons of stories. But right now, I would say the MSPs, their number one tool is to educate and to help the humans not create the same mistakes.
Yep. Create interest, create curiosity by educating prospects and clients.
Yep.
Simple advice. So let's pivot to selling this stuff, right? Selling cybersecurity. Again, you and I have talked to numerous partners, is like, if your prospect has never had a cyber incident, and you go at it from a technical approach, you're gonna get the glassy eye effect, right? People are just not going to resonate around it. So, like to kind of pivot around focusing on qualifying and uncovering prospect buyer needs, like result selling framework, to focus on this, on security and how to ask good questions to kind of position this, right?
Yep. 100%.
So when it comes to selling security solutions in general, AI readiness, whatever, what does the buyer of our services care about, and what things should you be asking to determine if they actually care about minimizing risk and to create that interest, that curiosity to reduce risk?
Yeah, well, you nailed it, right? The main value driver that's going to drive these conversations is going to be risk. Or another way I like to say it is, because risk seems like this nebulous word, I like to say helping a business hold on to what they've built and made, help them to retain the money, retain the organization, retain the integrity of their business that they've created up to this point. And we will shore up the defenses, and we'll do layer after layer after layer like an onion to protect them as best we can, or at a minimum, reduce the blast radius. But risk is the conversation. That's the main driver everybody wants to know about, is how am I going to hold on to this money? And then what I like to do next is, depending on the industry, because it does matter, some businesses are at higher risk than other businesses. Or the risk factor, I mean, yes, we have businesses that fall under compliance, like financials and government businesses, DOD and contractors. That's its own special category. And I think everybody that's listening probably already understands the CMMC side of the house. Got it. But let's go into these other areas that people forget about. For example, law firms or high-profile nonprofits or charities, where they don't think they really have a lot of risk. It's like, oh, nobody wants us, right? Who are we? We're just like a nonprofit. But what they're not thinking about is the risk to their reputation. Because if their reputation is lost because they have an incident that's been verified as actually legally a breach, and all of a sudden the police are involved, cyber insurance, they've got to notify everybody. Well, what about that donor list who now has all their data exposed? How well do you think that they're going to be able to recover from that when people pull their money out and never give you money again, and the word spreads that you're not responsible with the financial data that they're giving you, right? And so you could actually, a whole business could go under fairly easily. Same thing with law firms. There's a lot of business data, financial data, accounting firms, where reputation is everything, more than just the data itself. And loss of reputation by being a threat actor actually getting in and breaching could literally destroy a business. So those are conversations that I'm not a big fan of, the whole fear, uncertainty, and doubt kind of thing, but I do want to let people know the reality of, here are some stories of this is where it's truly happened by somebody clicking a link, an employee doing X, Y, and Z, something moving around inside the system, and it actually caused a reputational risk, or it caused enough damage that this business now is a fraction of what it used to be, and it's having to go after a whole new donor set, or it had to shift offices because of the financial hit. And others, we had a story last week where $850,000 in remediation and damages of a simple, what we would have considered a simple ransomware attack, but because of the reputation hit to it, it's cost them even more in the long term. So there's that first degree impact, whether it's ransomware, lockup, time lost. There's second degree impacts. And based on the segment of the type of business, that's kind of that conversation we have as we're moving into this. If I'm talking to something, say a business or like construction, I know, Keith, you're really into construction. Their risk factor is not as high as reputational risk or compliance, but they still have money. They've got other issues that they want to shore up the defenses as well. And when I have those conversations, the first thing I do is I segment the kind of business. What are their needs? We're all talking risk here, but everybody has different risk factors. And on a scale of 1 to 10, some are at a 9, some are at a 6, some are at a 3. Let's shift those conversations. Some people need some more basic security. Some need some more advanced security, and some need the full package. And they want multiple layers around it. And how do we have those conversations? And so I know in results selling framework, one of the beauties of the results selling framework is after we got past the value drivers, we start to ask these questions about, well, what are you currently doing? How are you protecting yourself? What are these levels of protection? Let's talk about your security posture. Where are you at currently? Where are we trying to get you to? And what would be the cost of this downtime, the cost of your employee downtime, and the cost of reputational risk and lack of donor funds or whatever happens to be. And so that, I believe, is the beginning of those conversations as we go down that results selling framework conversation.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Now you start, this is something I coach partners on, right? You kind of mentioned earlier, like, companies, your prospects, your clients have built their businesses, right? They've invested a lot of time and energy to grow to where they are. Like a cyber incident could, risk that reputation, if you will, but, how they grow their business, how they gain efficiencies, right? Those type of things. And, I typically, when I coach partners around this, it's like, just ask them like simple questions using results selling framework. Like, hey, you kind of mentioned member database, right? For a nonprofit. Like, what member database do you use for your nonprofits? What do you use it for? Understand how that line of business application runs that business, and ask them a simple question. Hey, have you ever had a situation where you couldn't access that software for like an hour, a half day, or a day due to a power outage or something similar to that? There's not too many people that haven't had a power outage that, impacted their company very, very minorly with that type of nuisance. But then from that standpoint, you can then take them through, you were kind of mentioning the cost, right?
Mm.
What did that 1 hour of downtime cost you? And then, you go through it from a labor standpoint, what you're paying your people. You can use some minimum hourly rate for that, be conservative. And then, hey, how much, you're a $5 million organization, over the course of a year, that breaks down to X per hour. This is what you lost in that hour or had to build up to regain. Now pivot the conversation to, have you ever had a cyber incident? No? Well, if you had a cyber incident, you can really multiply that by 100, because if you have a cyber incident, it could take, 3 days. It could take a week or 2 weeks to remediate and get you back up and fully running. What's that do to your business? Last thing I want to bring up is this. Most, for the MSP that's out there, James, they're talking to their prospect. Maybe that prospect had a cyber incident.
Mhm.
Maybe they didn't. So how should they frame it, right? If it's not happened to them, and you can't use, you kind of mentioned fear, uncertainty, doubt. I called it death, right? You can't can't sell like that, right? You got it's, hey, it hasn't happened to me, so what? How do you frame it so that way they do care about it? Give our folks some advice on questions you can ask, result selling framework to get to that, or even stories you can tell because you mentioned that piece.
Yeah, in fact, you just nailed it. The number one way is stories. So when we talk about our proof points that we've done this ourselves in the past for other clients, when you're having these conversations, it can be challenging because people throw their defenses up really quickly. So instead of saying, "Hey, you second party," you can actually say, "Did you know that the same type of industry down the street, this is something that happened to them?" Or here's another one. Have you ever considered that happening to your business? And you can kind of take the pressure off of them from a direct questioning where their defenses are up to, this is happening. These are the reality checks. This is the kind of stuff that we think will never happen to us, but it does happen. It's happened to the businesses just like yours. In fact, it might even happen to somebody you've known, right? And this is some of the issues they've faced because they didn't take it so seriously, or they didn't have the right kind of posture, or they introduced AI into something, or whatever happens to be. But to me, it's always about the stories. And whenever I teach on this or I talk about this, I advise people you need to know at least 5 to 10 stories minimum, and they're all over the internet. And there's a lot of stories we'd never hear because people are hiding, but there's stories everywhere on this for your client base. Once you segment out the type of industries you're clustering, we call it the target client profile or ideal client profile. Make sure you have stories that are relevant to them of different incidents attacks from different types and the actual impact and how, whether it was remediation or how either you've done it or somebody else has done it, but create the stories so somebody can pause and go, oh, okay, this is real. Maybe this could be something like, okay, tell me more, and start driving that conversation. And versus, when we go into a retail store and hey, can I help you with that? Can I help you with anything, Keith? Or oh no, no, just looking, and instantly our guards go up. Well, we got to get the guard down. And me personally, I used to say things like this. Uh, like I introduce myself and go into, so I just want to share a couple stories with you. I don't know if this is even relevant, and if not, just let me know. But did you know that so and so down the street at X? I did law firms and accounting firms, professional services. I would say the name, but I would say this particular law firm. Uh, you won't even believe what happened to them. And I share the brief story, and because they were a client of mine after the fact, because I had to remediate the damage. That's how they found me. I was able to actually share that if they would have had some literally basic protection in place, not only would they have saved their reputation, but it would have cost them a fraction of what the long-term play is. Because the one thing that nobody wants to tell you, the deep dark, and everybody on this call or who's going to hear this is going to know that we use technology to clean to a certain point, but then it's all projects and process and people for hours and hours and hours, and it costs a lot of money to rebuild and get somebody back to where they were. And yeah, we make money doing that, but it's a horrible feeling because it's at someone's pain or loss, and that's the thing we're trying to prevent at all costs. So that's one way I like to share. Another one is I ask questions about, have you heard X, Y, and Z? And my goal is to, like you said, create interest, maybe own a little bit of awareness, some desire, definitely some curiosity of, this is what's going on in the industry. Here's some changes that are happening. Have you heard about this? Do you know what's going on? And that way they can help lead the conversation as well. I can ask questions about, is that something you considered? How would you handle this if that would happen? I hear that you have cybersecurity, but just having antivirus alone, that's one small piece of 7 or 8 different tools. What about the multiple layers? How do you handle, do you know for sure that restoration of your backups will actually work within a certain amount of time? If your business is offline for 2 or 3 days, how's that going to affect you? That's the immediate effect, but what about the future effect? Those kind of things.
That's
It really
great.
is an interesting conversation, but a lot of it is educate, tell lots of stories. That's the key. Take the pressure off. Just let them know that this is really happening. This isn't something on the internet, It's happening in your neighborhood, whether people know it or not, or want to admit it. Tell stories about it around their industry or in the local area of different types of incidents, different types of attacks or breaches, and just ask questions. Have you thought about securing your email? What about end user training, or your employee training, just to make sure that they're not clicking on links that yeah, we all talked about the hover thing. Well, guess what? It's getting more and more challenging that even one person hovered over, and sure enough, the letter was just off enough that the human eye almost couldn't distinguish it, and they still clicked the link anyways, and bam, the payload was like, or another person grabbing extensions off our browsers. Who doesn't do that? Well, guess what? That's another way a threat actor can get in. It boggles my mind all the ways that somebody wants your data. They're going to do everything they can to get it, and that's why we assume the breach model, because they will find a way in. Now it's a matter of what kind of layers and how can we minimize the damage or the blast, right? So,
Right. Yeah, I love what you're saying, and the ability to tell a good story is so key. You hit on a couple things, like, when you're asking questions and you uncover, their mindset around security. Well, I've got antivirus, and yeah, I think I've got something else, but yeah, that's good enough, right? Maybe they have this email security and antivirus. It's like, oh, tell a story around it. It's like, well, would you have your house only equipped with a latch on your storm door with your windows and your screen door, and then have your storm door and your windows unlocked? It's kind of where you are, right? It's a story, resonates, something that people remember. I always remember this too from a partner who coaches this, and kind of piggyback on what you said around telling stories and bringing it home. Like, make it close to home. If you know of a specific company in their vertical that you can mention, do so. Maybe they know that business, especially if they're right down the street. The smaller you make the circle, the more it resonates with them.
yep.
Let's just kind of use real world example, right? So, when the fires in the Palisades happened in California, right? That's a horrible event, right? Everybody was, felt bad and, respond through, Red Cross and such. But, I'm all the way in Maryland. Like, from a standpoint, did that really impact me? No, not directly. I felt bad for the people that lost pretty much everything. But who did it matter to the most? People in Southern California, in the Palisades, right? They'll never, ever never forget about that, right? That event. If a cyber incident happens to our business, we're not going to forget about it. Something you'll never forget about. If it hasn't happened to you, you got to make sure that circle isn't as broad, right? It's got to hit home, and you got to be able to tell that story. So that's fantastic advice.
Yeah,
Let's wrap this up. Just from a standpoint, I'll throw this out as a broad question, just using RSF or any other questions that you would add or ask of a prospect or client trying to establish the need, if you will.
Any other questions? If I'm talking to the technical buyer, right, we know that person from the result selling framework, that they're going to want to get deeper into the weeds. And that's where we can do our assessments and really do an evaluation, true evaluation of the layers and what kind of framework would be best for them as an MSP, right? They might be a NIST 500, NIST 800, CS controls, whatever they happen to be. And we can go deeper into those kind of assessments. But when we get into that, the true decision maker, the person who can move those purse strings around, this is where it gets a little more challenging, because ultimately, again, it goes back to the value drivers. And I would ask something to the effect of, would your business survive if you actually had an incident breach, whether it was reputational or a major amount of money that you felt the sting of it? And then I would go into a story. For example, we had a partner or client years ago. They were a mortgage company, and they would go to a law firm and do all these third-party closings, and they'd put money into the escrow and move things around. And they were really, really large deals, all six-figure deals. And sure enough, the person in charge of moving their money around, the controller, decided she got an email from the CEO. Hey, I'm offsite. We're shifting locations. We're going to be at this other location. I need you to wire the money there. No problem. Everything looked valid. Did it, done. Little did we know that months earlier, not just days, months earlier, she had actually clicked on a link and saw her screen flash, didn't know what it was, didn't tell anybody, and then nothing happened. So she thought, okay, it was just a little glitch, no big deal. And this person, the threat actor, was actually bouncing around the network, sniffing and waiting and watching for months till they understood how this business worked, how money moved, who the players were, and how to emulate everything.
How
And
they
then when they,
communicated, right?
yeah, yeah. And then when they actually, well, I'll give you the end result is they lost that money. It was multiple six figures, and it hit the account and gone. And by the time they contacted the FBI and the insurance, it was unrecoverable. But what was really challenging in the fact that they were sniffing and walking around the network is you would think a modern day tool would find this. But again, this is what I mean by we have to assume breach. We have to assume that they're already in. The old days of, hey, let's just kind of catch them in the beginning are gone. We have to, and whether it's AI now and the new AI threat modeling that's coming out, or old school just threat actors, there are so many methods of attack now, and they're changing and evolving every day. And having these conversations with a prospect or a client is really simple. Talking about the risk and could you survive this, and sharing stories like that where this is real. Employees click on things. I mean, you build your business based on employees, but they can also take you out if you're not watching the risk, you're not doing the training and different things. And then Keith, if you were my client, I'd ask you, so what are you doing to manage this risk? What are you doing to hold on to what you've been making? What are your plans? What are you doing? And getting into that conversation. They might say, well, talk to my IT person or whoever. But ideally, I'm planting the seed, I'm having conversations, because the reality is they're trying to grow. And if they don't have the right kind of posture and security levels in place, assuming breach, they are setting themselves up for a mega disaster, because
Wow.
it's not a
Yep.
matter of if and when. And there's one last thing I want to mention, because I get this objection all the time. And that is, well, why would anybody want my stuff? I'm such a small business. Nobody wants my data. And it may not be that they want your data, but I like to teach and share that when you think on a global perspective, you are somebody's meal ticket. They might be making $10,000 a year annually. I mean, that's it. That's all their money. And for them to get you for 25,000 or 50,000, which is a small ransomware, that's a 10 times, it's a huge payday, right? 500% payday, 5x. They can pay off their house. They can, I mean, Merry Christmas for everybody. And so you are the target. And that's why they're going after the small ones, because you don't invest, or not you, your clients don't invest, prospects don't invest. You don't think you really need it. So then you squabble and fight over it. And then when it actually happens, nobody wants to talk about it, because it's going to affect your business. Nobody wants to do business with somebody who doesn't know how to take care of the data, right? So there's all these factors at play. We need to bring that to the surface and have these conversations and share stories so they understand it's happening all over. Let's get you protected, right? Let's get you some seatbelts, some airbags. Let's protect your business enough that will keep you viable and keep you moving in case of any type of blast or incident. So
That's fantastic. Great way to kind of wrap up our time together here. Um, Great advice, great information. Um, how do our partners get more? How to sell security and just really, establish that framework here at Academy through our on-demand resources all the way through. What are some resources for our partners to, tips for them after they listen to this podcast? These things they have to do.
yeah, we have. If you go to your Pax8 Academy and in the marketplace, you can find us. We have some on-demand training. We're adding more, almost I won't say weekly, but we're adding more and more as we can. We have some instructor-led training that we're working on as well, getting deeper into not just the tool set, but also how to sell this, how to create different levels of posture. But the other one is also building your business to where it's actually profitable and knows how to have these conversations and drinking your own champagne. So we have coaching around that specifically. We pretty much run the full gamut. And Pax8 Academy, that's where we go to find all those cool resources that are out there. Just keep checking. I believe we're going to have a security hub. I don't know for sure, but if we do have that security hub or web page in place, it's going to have tons of resources, because that's our job, is to enable you and teach you and help you not just eat your own dog food, drink your own champagne, live the security lifestyle, but also help your clients, protect them, keep them safe, because you genuinely care and you are the technical experts and they need you. Just frankly, they need you.
Excellent stuff, James. Thanks, brother. I really appreciate you being on this show again. All kinds of value for our audience. So thanks again, my friend.
Always a pleasure. Love being here.
Excellent. Thanks again. We'll see you next time. All right. That's a wrap on another Result Selling Framework podcast. Just some phenomenal information. I hope you found some insight to it. Look, we can't assume that because we care about cybersecurity solutions that our buyer will. We must generate curiosity and need. Why? Because our buyer doesn't really know what to do, what they need, what they don't need. They all care about minimizing the risk to their company. We just need to determine how much so. Some tips for things you need to uncover. 1, understand the prospect's current security posture and preparedness. 2, asking questions, right? Dig into their past experience, find out what they know, what they have felt before, allowing you to tailor your solutions around it. And 3 is really being able to tell stories on how you've helped other businesses with problems just like that, how you've helped prevented bad things from happening, and understanding from a standpoint of a security practice and reveal opportunities for continuous improvement. That's what you got to do. The risk is not only on them as small business, but if we're providing the IT support, the risk is now on us as well to make sure that we're providing them the highest level of security. So it's very important and critical that you ask good questions to understand where they are and determine and qualify them as being a fit or not a fit. So, as we mentioned, go to Pax8 Academy to see Result Selling Framework to sell better. James mentioned a bunch of resources in our on-demand portal that are free around security itself, right? I hope you enjoyed this show. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We're streaming everywhere, these podcasts. So if you're taking a walk around the block or driving to your next appointment, make sure you put it on. If you liked today's episode, please share and leave a review. We'd appreciate that. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next month when I meet with Rex Frank to discuss preparing for an industry event. See you next time on Result Selling Framework Podcast.